Hello, welcome back. It's good to be back. It's been a while. I'm hoping to be more regular. I always say that all the time, but we'll see what happens. Um, this video is going to be a little bit like a part two of number 9. So you may want to watch the video number 9 first about who the Nephilim were and who they are still on the planet, on the earth today. So I'll recap just a tiny bit, but I don't want to go too much into it, so it won't be that video and this video all over again. But we know that before the flood, the Watchers were, it was like God placed certain angels over regions to watch over us, his creation that he made in his image. And those Watchers sinned. And this is the short version, so go watch number 9 if you want the long version, if any of this, is confusing to you. But they mated with us to have children, which was a great sin. They made this pact. There was 200 of them that made this pact. And they mated with us and had children. Now, these children are what we get the Greek God stories from. All of that mythology isn't myths. That was all real things that happened. The demigods, because there was fallen angels, which in the myth version is the gods, although we know there's only one God. But because they're celestial beings that have more power than us, they're called gods. So they're the fallen angels. But their children with us would be like the demigods, right? And they had certain powers. And we see this play out in movies today. They're literally telling their story to us, like through the Marvel movies and so forth. Even the one where I forget what the family's called. It was a cartoon. I think they made a movie out of it. But, each kid had to discover what their powers were, as they grew up. And that's kind of what happened, because you have fallen angels that have certain DNA, of course, and then they're mixing with human. They don't know how the kid's going to come out. But what also happened is they mated with animals. And then, of course, the next generation is you have a half human, half angel, and then you have a half angel, half animal, but those mated. So then you have really hybrids where it's like the mermaids and the fairies and stuff, because you have part human, animal, part angel, right? So when that started to happen, it was really chaotic, and you had all different kinds of creatures walking around with different types of abilities. That they didn't know how they were going to turn out. But if you look at all of the depictions of gods on Egyptian walls, like in the pyramids and stuff painted, or if you go to Assyria and you see all of these gods depicted, they're half animal, half human. Some of them have wings, part angel. These were real beings. We always look at them now today as if they were just like these gods that people made up. And they worship these just made up gods as if that would happen. I think scientists or historians try to make us think that humans in the past were so much different than us. They thought so much different, but they're not any different. We wouldn't just create a drawing of a part animal, part human, and then start worshiping it and build temples to it and sacrifice to it. No, these were real beings. These were real beings. And I know that's hard to grasp and believe, but that's only because the age of enlightenment taught us that these weren't true. And who would tell us that lie? Of course, it's Satan that would tell us the lie that this isn't true, that science is the path, which is really Satan's way of saying, let's not look at the truth, because I don't want to be exposed for who I really am. Let's just, say that this is the truth. But it is, and we're starting to discover that now. You see, the movies today, Ancient Aliens and all that stuff, and we're starting to realize that the race that was here was very advanced before the flood. So now we are starting to see the truth is starting to come out. But God killed those all in the flood, and because it was just getting out of hand, and they were killed. They were basically ruling over His creation, the humans, which they're jealous of us because we're made in God's image. So they didn't want to have kids because, oh, they wanted to have children. No, they wanted power. They wanted to rebel against God, and they wanted to make us slaves so that we would serve them, because we don't realize that we have power. And they thought, okay, well, I'll just, we'll teach them a little bit, and they'll think, these spells and stuff that we teach them are, something they want so bad, this knowledge, that they'll give their lives to us and they'll serve us to get that. But of course, they were more powerful than us, and so they were scary. Some of them were giants. So God eventually killed them all in the flood, and He saved Noah and his family because they were the only ones that were not engaging in this sexual activity with these hybrids. This is when sexual deprivation entered the world. This wasn't something humans started to do. This was something the fallen angels introduced, because they left their state where they were supposed to be, and they crossed the line. And now that's what we see going on today with the whole transgenderism stuff, right? And we'll get into that in just a second. But they were killed in the flood, and their bodies died, but their souls or spirits were what we call demons today, because their bodies are dead, but their spirits are just roaming around. And they want to find a body. So that's why there's demon possession. They want to try to find a body to still live. However, they also are now mixing, fooling around with DNA again, so that they can create bodies for these spirits to inhabit. And that's what we have going on now. So the 200 angels that did this were punished very severely. They're in chains now in a place called Tartarus, and that's where we get the story of the 7 titans in Greek mythology. There were 7 leaders, but there were 200 of them in all, and they are in chains right now. But there's many more fallen angels that weren't a part of this sin. They're still fallen, and they still rebelled against God, but they weren't a part of this particular sin, so they're not chained. So we have fallen angels, and then we have the disembodied spirits of all of the Nephilim, who are the demons. And they now are finally to the point where they are using us to make new bodies for themselves. So they didn't want to recreate this horrible sin, because they didn't want to be punished like the way they saw the other 200 punished. But they still wanted to find a way to create bodies for the disembodied spirits. And the reason they want to do that is they want to build an army. They want to build an army because they still think that they can win. And this army is for Armageddon. So Jesus isn't going to just come down and be fighting humans that are that took the mark of the beast. It is those who joined. Taking the mark of the beast is joining the fallen angels. And right now that is already going on, meaning there are humans who have joined these fallen angels, and that's why we hear of satanic rituals and so forth going on. And they are engaging in helping these fallen angels to create bodies using our DNA. So that's why we have alien abductions. These are not aliens, they're fallen angels. They abduct us to take our DNA. They are creating other kinds of beings. We have evidence that they are trying to mix even animal and like metal DNA into human DNA to try to make like super soldiers. So bones can't break, or the being they're creating can live off of like grass, so they won't need food and they'll be super strong. So in a war, they can release these creatures, and they're experimenting with this type thing. We've had many like whistleblowers tell us of stuff that they've seen, and that is why the government has all this top secret stuff. Most governments are in contact with these fallen angels, and they know exactly what's going on. And that's kind of what I want to get at in this video. So what happened was, as I was explaining, they did mate with animals as well. Well, if you notice when you read the Bible and the story of Noah, everyone thinks that all life on earth was killed. And that's not what the Bible says, actually. The Bible says that all life on land and in the air was killed. It doesn't say the ocean. And we know the animals that were brought into the ark, and Noah doesn't bring fish into the ark because, of course, fish would survive the flood, right? They're gonna survive. So fish survived, and there were some aquatic Nephilim that survived, where they were part like fish and part either part angel and part fish, or part angel and part human and part fish. So we have, things like mermaids and sea creatures and so forth that are Nephilim. Now, as I was saying in the video number 9, if you research every single royal family on earth, if you go back, well, who was the very first king? You keep going back and back and back, then you start getting into quote-unquote myths and legends, because and they all say that a mermaid, if you look up Melusine, you'll see this whole story. But they all say they came from either a mermaid that came out of the ocean and mated with a human, or it was a naga, which is half snake, half human, or it was a dragon. And I did a whole video on what the dragons are, which are a tribe of angels. So they're actual fallen angels. There may have been Nephilim that looked similar to that was like half angel too. But they all have a legend of some sea creature coming out of the ocean, mating with the human, or falling in love. Some of them rape a human, like Europa. It was a minotaur that raped Europa, and that was the first of the Roman people. Every single country has a legend like this, and a different creature came out, and those were the royal families. And that's why royal families always believed, and not only did they believe, but the humans believed that they were gods. And they came down from heaven, and they were like part God because they were part angel. And even the name England and Anglo-Saxon comes from the root word angel. So we have, and even all of those mythological stories like Beowulf and all of these, go back, you'll see the first king was from some sea creature that mated with an animal, and then you'll see like the bloodline, and that's why they intermarry, because they want to keep as much of the angel DNA in them as possible. They don't want it to be bred out. And you say, well, today they have started to marry outside of royal blood. No, it's just that now they're doing all these DNA tests all over the world, and they know which humans have still like some angel DNA in them. A lot of the O negative blood type, because the negative, Rh negative, they don't know where that came from, because no mammals have Rh negative blood, only reptiles have Rh negative blood, and they don't know how it got into humans. So they know how the different blood types, all positive, came, but they don't know how the negative. Well, I'm telling you how it happened. It was these half, in royal families how it's only the firstborn that is the heir, right, that becomes the king. But the other children, well, when they marry, their kids have just as much of that bloodline in them, but they're not the royal line. But of course, other people are walking around today and they have, some of the angel DNA, right? So they have tried to find people that have that in order to intermarry with them. And so they're still actually intermarrying with people, that royal blood. But what happened is royal families then were ruling over us. So even though the flood happened, there was these Nephilim, the aquatic Nephilim that survived, and they were still finding a way to rule over us. And they live in these huge castles, and they have all of us as their servants, and they oppress us. And when did that? That was all throughout time, history. There was kings that oppressed us until when? Until America. Until America happened, and we then introduced democracy. And now we don't have a king and queen. We have elected officials. And not only are we a country that started democracy, but we took down, in World War I and War II, we took down all the royal families, right? These countries rose up to take down the royal families because they didn't want to be oppressed anymore. And then they called on America for help, and we came and we helped. And so all the world had royal families ruling over them until America. So this is why, and this is the point I want to get to in this video, this is why they want to take down America. This is why. It's only been 248 years this has been going on out of all of history. All of history, the royal families ruled over us. But now, they're not. We have democracy and we have freedom, and they're dying out, and they're mad. So now they have, in America, they created Hollywood, which is kind of like our royal family, because they're like millionaires and now billionaires, and they are these people that we admire and looked up to and follow, and they set the trends. They set the trends when it comes to music and movies, and what happens is they're then influencing us away from God. So all of the taking God out of schools and destroying families and the whole LGBTQ, whatever letters it is, movement, and now transgender and all this stuff, it is all to break down the family and to put us into a position where they are ruling us again. They want to take down America. And I have to talk in code in a lot of ways here. I have to make sure I don't say too much, but that is why they released a certain plague. And that is why they're trying to stop a certain person running for president. And there's this group, people call it the deep state, because they recognize there's some kind of enemy, there's some kind of group or organization that is doing this behind the scenes, and they call it the deep state. Well, I'm telling you right now, it is the Nephilim. And they have a lot of humans on board with them, and the way that they get humans on board with them is they promise them fame and fortune, money and power. And if they bow to Satan, they will have whatever basically they want. They can be the movie star they want. They could be the scientist that they want that's famous. They could be the athlete that's famous. Whatever it is that they want, as long as they bow to Satan and they then have to serve him and do his bidding, then they get that power, they get that money and that fame. And then these people in those groups are what is trying. They own all the banks in the world. They own and control all the money. They're the people that can decide to cause inflation and have us suffer, or they could, give out loans and help us to be all like flourishing. They're the people who changed the, I'm not going to say the word, but the way that our bank is. It's not the way that it was before a certain president that was shot in the 1960s. So anytime there is a president or a group of people that are fighting this group, they take them down. And now more and more of us are aware of what's going on. And, we don't want to talk about it because we sound crazy or we're like labeled conspiracy theorists. But of course they want to take us down. So they're going to try to discredit us, right? But this is the truth. This is what's going on. And these people meet yearly and they plot how they can take us down. And they have found many different ways to do that. One was the plague released, right? Other ways is this whole how they're importing people all over the world, because when you love a country, you're going to be willing to die for that country and that culture. But if people are moved all around, and then there's a whole bunch of people that don't identify with one country and one culture that they identify with, then they're not going to fight for that country, right? They're not in their country of origin anymore. They're somewhere else, and they're not going to die and love this country the way that we love this country, and they're not willing to die for this country. So this is all bringing in that global government, because if people are not identifying with a certain country and a certain culture, then, and it's all mixed, well, then it's just going to become a world economy, a world leader, and that's bringing in the Antichrist and the world monetary system that we see in the book of Revelation. And eventually, the world leader, that when this finally happens, we see that they're already trying to take away cash. And once they take away cash and everything is on credit, it's all on a computer. A touch of a button is just going to take your money away. They can just say at any moment, well, you have to do X, Y, Z, like you have to get a certain shot, or you have to bow to this person and worship them in order to have your money, in order to be able to buy and sell anything, in order to go to school, in order to get a job, in order to keep your children. We saw that was already kind of happening a couple of years ago, right? Where you couldn't work if you didn't have a certain something. You couldn't go to school or leave the country if you didn't have a certain something, right? So that was like a test run. The next time it's going to be worse, and they're going to try to, they have to basically take down America in order to bring this to fruition. And then the world leader will seem very benevolent. He's going to unite us all, and we're all going to have, this utopia. We're all going to be, instead of super rich, everybody's going to share and everybody's going to be equal. But that's not what they want. That's a lie. And once that happens and everybody buys into that, the people that don't buy into that will be killed. It says this in Revelation. And then that is when, in order to be saved, you're going to have to die for Jesus at that point. Now you can accept Jesus, and when he comes in the rapture, then we're going to escape all of that. But if you don't choose now, then at that point you'll be forced to choose. And if you either take the mark or you die for Jesus. If you die for Jesus, you get to go to heaven. So if you're watching this, don't take the mark. Die for Jesus, whatever that entails. It may be a horrific death. It may not be, it looks like a lot of people would just be beheaded, which I guess is like quick and like the least painless. But I don't know if they're going to be doing horrific, horrible things first. The Bible says it's going to be the worst situation that ever in history has been. So if you think of the Holocaust, if it's going to be worse than that, then it's going to be pretty bad. So you don't want to be left. So accept Jesus now. If you are left, though, whatever you have to go through, do not take that mark. Then you'll at least go to heaven. The people who take that mark when Jesus returns are going to be thrown in hell. But eventually, though, Jesus is going to come back, and the people who were raptured out are going to be behind him on white horses, and we're going to rescue the people left, which is basically Israel. So Israel at that time will be surrounded by all of those who took the mark, and Israel will start to realize that Jesus was the Messiah, and they will call out to him. And when that happens, Jesus will come back. When he entered Jerusalem, the first Palm Sunday, he told the Pharisees that day, he said, you missed your appointment. You should have known what day this was. It was the dates were given to you in Daniel exactly. So you should have known that the Messiah would come right now, this day. And I'm here, and you're rejecting me. And so the age of the Gentiles started, and he opened it up to the Gentiles because the Jews rejected him. But he said he will not return until they say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So until they call out for him and they recognize that he's the Messiah, he won't return. So we know then that if he's going to return, that will take place, that there will be Jews that will recognize him as the Messiah at that time, at the end of the tribulation, and they will call out to him. And he's going to return, and he's going to save them, and we're going to be behind him when he returns to Armageddon. But Armageddon is going to be a battle against the fallen angels, the Nephilim, in the bodies that they created, because they're creating an army. They're creating an army because they know this is coming, and they're going to try to win. They're going to try to fight God himself, and they're going to lose, but it's going to be an actual battle. And what that looks like, I'm not sure, because if we're in our glorified bodies, we know that we can't be hurt or killed. So I'm not exactly sure, because we know there was a war in heaven before, and that Satan lost and was cast out. So I don't know what constitutes who wins and who loses in that kind of a war. I don't know, but we'll understand then. However, the Bible does say in Ezekiel 39, there's so many bodies that Israel will be cleaning up the bodies for 7 months. So all of the humans who took the mark will actually physically die and be killed, and their body, their souls will go to hell, but their bodies will be, it would be so much, so many bodies, it'll take 7 months for Israel at that time to clean up all of the bodies. But after that, Revelation 20 says that those who were killed for Jesus during the tribulation rise, and they are then get their glorified bodies, and they rule and reign along with us, with Jesus, over the survivors of the tribulation, who will stay in human form at that time and repopulate the earth for the millennial kingdom. And the millennial kingdom will be the real utopia, where it's King Jesus ruling from Jerusalem. And that will go on for 1,000 years. And there's still a rebellion. And people say, well, why? Why is there like a millennium? And this is just my opinion, but I believe because Satan will be tied up. He's not in hell yet. He's tied up during that time. And he's going to be